As many of you all know, we are living under a year of fear, panic, and desperation. A year where germaphobes walk the earth, people gathering more toilet paper faster than a prankster on Halloween, and some losing their jobs to the virus, and even worse, losing their loved ones because of it. We have every right to be scared, nervous, worried, and even anxious about what goes on in the outside world. But there is one thing that we as human beings have always believed in whenever the world becomes bleak and sorrowful. And that, my friends, is hope. It's one of the most purest things that anyone could ever ask for. To return the favor by bringing others hope, I would like to take the initiative and the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite movies of all time. A movie about millions in desperation and division, but more importantly, in hope for a brighter future for all of humanity. In all of my years of watching movies, there is no other film that personifies that descriptor than a film that is perhaps the best movie of the 2000s. A film made by visionary extraordinaire Alfonso Cuarón that was tragically snubbed at the Oscars for Best Picture, but still manages to achieve critical acclaim from the likes of Roger Ebert and Peter Travers. While its setting is bleak, the film is about as hopeful as you can possibly get. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my review of Children of Men. Where you have my favorite movies of all time that have to deal with God in movie form, dealing with the survival between both the humans and his fellow kind, ragdolls being the last remaining fragments of humanity, aliens as refugees, or a post-apocalyptic movie about a ruthless car chase throughout the sand-ridden wasteland. You have dystopian movies about the existence and the unity of humanity, going into a downward spiral of despair that are so grounded in realism and authenticity that may project that in the future, maybe like this can actually happen without being ludicrous or faux. Children of Men is one of those movies, and if there is a singular word to describe this movie to all of you watching, it would have to be a word that I would use almost rarely, and not something I would hand out in magnanimous quantities like I have done with some movies that I have reviewed in the past, but in a sense of total and pure sincerity. It is a masterpiece. And it's a movie that stands as a landmark of the 21st century and should be recognized throughout Hollywood and even the Library of Congress because of how much of an unspeakable majesty that Alfonso Cuarón's magnum opus truly is. And it's also a film that will manage to inspire and even manifest some of the best superhero movies of the 2010s. You're welcome, Logan. Loosely based on the novel created by P.D. James of the same name, Children of Men is a dystopian thriller that is set in the year 2027 in London, while mankind has no hope to bear while in the midst of chaos, despair, and the brink of human extinction. The reason being for humanity's downfall is that for 18 years, the world is facing infertility, with not a single woman having the ability to conceive a child, and the actual cause remains unknown. Clive Owen plays Theo Farron, an activist turned bureaucrat who goes about his day in this depressing environment, drinking, smoking, sulking, and even visiting his old friend Jasper, played by Michael Caine, a political cartoonist turned weed dealer. Suddenly, Theo is abducted by a radical immigrants' rights group called the Fishes that is led by Theo's estranged wife, Julian, played by Julianne Moore, and Luke, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor. He's been tasked for, in exchange for a large amount of money, to escort a young adult named Key to something called the Human Project, a rumored organization that is trying to cure infertility. While at first in denial and doubt, he eventually realizes that Key herself is pregnant, which sparks his hopeful determination into action. So Theo takes it upon himself to do whatever it takes to protect this girl and this would-be baby, all the way to the Human Project, with mankind resting on the shoulders of the mother and the child. The story from the get-go is flawless and breathtaking, keeping you on the edge of your seat as it progresses. Not a single moment of this movie feels predictable or cliched in the slightest. Everything happens in this movie with a specific reason, without resulting in an exposition explaining why things came to be or how we can overcome it. And everyone has different goals that they want to accomplish, whether it's beneficial or bad for the society that they live in. Despite having been loosely adapted from the pages of the book itself, Alfonso Cuarón's visionary approach is what keeps this movie on its feet. He has an eye for authenticity, and his touches on the screenplay breathes life and vulnerability to the characters, giving them understandable motivations, character depth, and even well-crafted dialogue. And out of all of the multitudinous elements that make Children of Men such an artistic work of fiction, the first thing I have to address is that it's the setting in this movie that really hooks you in. As soon as we reach the opening, the camera pans across the streets of a London city. We see a grimy, depressing, modernized look of a London population and city, aside from containing a few technological enhancements such as signs, news bulletins, and even digitized billboards, signifying of a very near future aesthetic that is close to our own. The vehicles and even smaller venues like bars, coffee shops, abandoned schools, farms, and even ghetto hotels feel natural, well-produced, genuine, and never feel too over-exaggerated to where it feels much like crossing into Blade Runner territory and leads more of an approach to a world quite similar to one of the film's biggest inspirations, being A Clockwork Orange. Even the world building is astonishing, just by simple news reports or small little dialogues, or the film showing us rather than telling us, aids the atmosphere and the storytelling. There are scenes of lower-class citizens throwing garbage at a train as it passes by, religious protest groups saying infertility was God's punishment the whole time, immigrants being in cages or being taken away by buses to camps. You have advertisements in the first act that imply that many countries have destroyed themselves because of the plague, radiation, and warfare, and that the United Kingdom still remains as one of the more functioning countries in the world, as it maintains an authoritative and militarized function with an illegal immigration policy and caging others from different countries trying to survive. And at the same time, the film has a great point of view of itself in the story, where there are no biased angles being presented, as both groups have their struggles and faults on display. On one hand, you have a forceful police government trying to keep everybody in check, and on the other, radical groups with a cause fighting for the rights of others, or even the religious stance, by use of committing to dangerous uprisings and revolutions. Both have significant flaws with one another, using procedures or violence trying to harm one another, with the very middle of these sides striving to find prosperity and hope in a world of turmoil and destruction. One of my favorite scenes, and even one of my favorite opening scenes in film history, is when Theo is walking out of a coffee shop or a cafe after hearing reports of Diego Ricardo's passing, who was the last youngest person alive, and after dousing his drink with alcohol, abruptly a bomb blasts off in the cafe, with smoke and debris and damage flying everywhere as you see a woman walking out with a blown off arm. The execution couldn't be more perfect, and because why I love that scene in particular, because it takes you by surprise and establishes from the outset that this world is heading towards a hell of its own without any sense of peace. The performances and the characters are stellar and outmatch anything in this year in 2016 in that department. Clive Owen delivers what is quite possibly his best performance of his entire career, as he portrays a character that is being tossed into a situation that he doesn't really want to be a part of, and despite having a history of being an activist, pulls himself to bring back potential of hope and peace in a world without it. Theo as a character is also one of the most relatable protagonists I have ever seen. Even while having a very cynical and sulking behavior, he has human qualities about him that make us connect with his character. We feel sorry for him whenever he loses someone he cares for. He's terrified when he's being thrust into a war zone. He's just an ordinary man in a tough position that could risk his own life. And because of that, we root for him to succeed and make it back in one piece. Michael Caine as Jasper delivers a fantastic performance as he plays a character who supports Theo on his journey as his lifelong friend and delivers light-hearted comedy that feels so genuine that it makes you want to laugh along with him. Not to mention that he delivers one of the best pieces of dialogue in the whole movie, where he talks about faith and chance while referring to a story of Theo and Julianne's baby who died from the flu pandemic. That's actually brilliant and even touching. Julianne Moore provides an amazing performance as Theo's estranged lover, and Chiwetel Ejiofor portrays a tense, ruthless presence into the character of Luke, as a man in desperation trying to silence the controlling and damaging government with an uprising. Now here comes quite possibly the film's biggest selling point in its entirety: the cinematography. Inarguably, one of the best uses of cinematography I have seen in quite some time. Emmanuel Lubensky, who later on received Academy Awards for movies like Gravity and The Revenant, is at the peak and the pinnacle of his brilliance with this movie. From establishing shots of wasteland-like foliage with bits of sewage, to the extraordinary extended tracking shots that last from like 2 to 6 minutes total. The tracking shots that are used to perfection are used in the opening sequence, as I have mentioned previously, with the cafe bombing, and even the climactic final set piece of Theo running across the streets during an uprising while avoiding gunfire. No fault is seen within this film's pureless cinematography, as every single shot breathes life, emotion, darkness, and even fills you with a sense of awe. And it does so more than any single art piece that can be seen at one of the best museums possible. It is something that is truly a marvel to behold, that took so much effort, practice, persistence, and timing, that at the same time, it also disappoints me that the film did not get recognized or even win Best Cinematography. And that is a tragic shame if I ever saw one. Another thing that Alfonso Cuarón does very well with this movie is the way that he handles the score throughout the film. Instead of using a natural composer just like every single other movie would, he instead uses a variety and mixture of different kinds of music to tell the story and even convey the emotions of the characters. For example, a score that is used incredibly frequently is John Tavener's Fragments of a Prayer. And yes, the song is amazing. But what makes it so much better is the way that Cuarón handles the score in separate places. Whether it's used in a bleak manner or used to elicit fulfillment and emotion, especially towards the film's ending. And if that wasn't enough, the film's ending, all on its own, is one of the saddest, yet fulfilling, and powerful endings I have ever seen for a movie. It almost made me tear up, not just because of the execution and the cinematography and the performances with the music on display, but by the hopeful tone and nature that the film gives to the viewer. It's cathartic, and it's something that everyone should take away from this cinematic masterwork. There is no other movie that deserves to be called a masterpiece than Children of Men. Everything that you will witness in this movie never falls short of anything, from the characters, to the performances, to the music, to the cinematography, to the setting, and the themes of coming together as a society for the better. What makes this movie better is how rewatchable it is. It's a movie that every single time you watch it, you become speechless as the film finds new and inventive ways to shock you. This movie is also important because it tells audiences, right when the ending credits roll, no matter how bad our darkest hour is going to be, when all hope seems to be lost, hope is always there for us. And we need to work together as one to make things possible and to not give up on our future. There is no other way to put it other than the fact that Children of Men is the cinematic miracle that mankind has been waiting for. I guess that about does it. Anyway guys, thank you all for listening to my review of one of my favorite movies of all time, Children of Men. If you liked this video, please like and comment below what you thought of this undisputed masterpiece yourself. You'll also find me on media outlets such as Facebook, Twitter, and if you have a phone, possibly find me on Instagram. And as always, if you'd like to see more reviews like this, be sure to subscribe for more. Hope is always there for us, dear viewer. Our only option is to never give up, no matter the personal cost. My name is Nukem. And you, my friends, have been blown away